drama was mostly for entertainment and then, to preach morals to people. So there was some kind of moral message in the dramas of this period. Now, this trend kind of continued for most of this century until the end of the Civil War. Now, this was also the time, you'll have to remember, when industries sprung up in America. Okay, so when industries sprung up, what happens? Then a new social class formed. Until that time, there was very small working middle class. But then when the industries came up, the companies came up, and then the factories came up, this social class called working middle class also came up, right? So the themes related to these social classes were portrayed in drama of this period. Now we are still in 1800 to 1865. Okay, so major themes were related to these social classes. Now, this was also when the period, like I said, when Americans tried to get away from the British style of drama and then the British European themes. What they did is I'm sorry, hold on for 1 second. Yeah. So they tried to get away from the British style, the European style, the British theme, the European themes, everything. Okay. So there is nothing much to talk about American drama during this period, 1800 to 1865. Whatever had to happen happened afterwards. Okay. Now, one very important type of drama of this period, we talked about this in the offline classes also. It's called the minstrel show. Now, what is a minstrel show? This is a kind of a racist entertainment setup. Okay, a typical minstrel play, it has black people and one white person. The white person is in the middle, and then black people are on either side of this white person. Excuse me. And then there will be a chorus that stands behind the white person. Okay, so you can imagine the setup. There's a white person, there's black people around him, and then behind there's a chorus. Then there will be jokes and songs and skits and that kind of stuff. But usually these jokes were at the expense of the black people. So they were joking on the black people. Okay. So why did they do this? Because suddenly, even before this period, the black lives didn't carry a lot of value, but especially during this period, the value of the black lives was very, very low. Okay. When I say black lives, it is basically lives of the black people, the slaves, right, during this period. So like I said, the jokes were at the expense of these people. Let me see the scale. Okay, the screen sharing is here. Let me share my screen. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. All right. So because these jokes were at the expense of these black people, you can see why this type of drama is extremely racist, right? It was later, it kind of went into oblivion and nobody kind of talks about these minstrel plays now. But then during that period, this was a pretty famous phenomenon. This might come as a short answer question or something in your exam. Okay, just explain what minstrel shows or whatever. Okay, anyway, let's move on to any questions so far? Okay, let's move on to the period 1865 to 1914. Okay, again, why 1914? Why is this book talking about, specifically 1914? Somebody actually answered this question earlier, but does anybody know what 1914 stands for? What happened in 1914?
World War I.
Right, World War I started, right? So now we are talking about the period between the end of Civil War and then the start of World War I. Okay. Now we know that in the second part of, in the previous class, we have talked about this, but we know that in the second part of 19th century in America, realism was kind of big, right? They were talking about, these realist themes and whatnot. This is when people started writing about local color also. What is local color? Local color basically is everything to do with your local language, local customs, and local culture, and that kind of stuff. What does that mean? So let's say I'm the author, and then I am from Hyderabad, and then I write about the local color, which is the local Hyderabadi language, Deccani language, the influence of that, or the local Hyderabadi customs, Hyderabadi culture. So that's the local color. Okay. Now let's say Raj is from, let's say, UP. Okay, I'm just speaking. I'm not saying you're from UP, but I'm just for example, Raj. Okay. Now what happens is he will write about his local color. Similarly, Afroz will write something about her local color. Lily will write something. Anjum will write something. So if you really look at it, the summation of these local colors is a realistic representation of the nation itself, right? So I write about my local color, Hyderabad, or let's say Telangana, and then Raj writes about UP, somebody writes about MP, somebody writes about Rajasthan, whatever, right? And somebody for Tamil Nadu. Now, you add all these things, you will see a realistic representation of the nation, right? So the argument basically here is a summation of all local colors. You add all these local colors and then you have a realistic representation. Okay, that's all fine. But what themes did these realist dramas have? Okay, we know that realism is basically a realistic portrayal of regular life, right? We've already defined that in the previous classes. What was realistically happening in society at this time? There were race relations, basically relation between a white man and a black man, or white and black, man or woman, it doesn't matter. Then there was marriages, and then there was immorality, and then these were the major themes that were kind of explored in the dramas of this period, because these were the issues and themes of the society of that time in general. Again, I'll go back to that same point that I keep making. Whatever happens in society is reflected in literature anyway. So whatever is, all these themes were prominent in society, so they are prominent also in the literature. Okay, now very quickly we'll move to drama between the world wars. Between the world wars is a very, very, very sensitive time, not only for the US, but across the world. Why? Because of something called Great Depression. I don't know if you know what Great Depression is, but anyway, that is a major thing that happened between the wars. And Great Depression is the economic meltdown. Let me put it that way. Okay, there was an economic meltdown, an economic depression that happened during, from 1929 to 1939, that particular decade. What happened at that time was 1929 stock market crashed, and then huge number of people lost their jobs. Everything became expensive. People lost trust on government, so on and so forth. Okay. Now what kind of sort of a natural offshoot of this is a type of drama called the protest drama. What is protest drama? As the name suggests, it basically mocks the government, and then this type of drama was basically a weapon for creating awareness in people. Okay, they were basically saying, hey, you think the government is saving you, but then the government is responsible for all this crashing of stock market, and then the war and everything, right? And then they were informing and educating the public about the stuff that matters to the people as a community. Okay. I don't want to talk about contemporary American drama yet. We will talk about it in the subsequent slides. Okay, let me move this. Okay. Okay. No, but before we'll move on to one of the greatest American playwrights called Eugene ONeill. But then before we move on to O'Neill, right? Let us spend a little bit of time on the general structure of drama. What is drama? Okay. How is it structured? What is the typical, is there a typical structure for drama or not? Okay, let's talk about that. We did talk about this in the offline class. So does anybody remember what is the general structure of a drama? How is it structured?
Exposition, raising action, and climax.
No, sorry, Sailakshmi, can you repeat that?
Exposition, rising action, climax.
Okay, you told me 3 out of the 5. Okay, 5 characteristics. Okay, yeah, that's good. So let me just repeat. Okay, a typical play has like 5 parts to it. The first one is like Sailakshmi said, exposition. What does that mean? In this phase, what happens is the playwright will introduce the background, events, and then the characters, and that kind of stuff happens in the exposition part. Then we come to the rising action part, where there is a suspense created. So there will be events happening in the play where there is some kind of suspense build up. Okay. Then the next phase is called climax. You all know what climax is. And then there is something called falling action. What happens in this phase is the main conflict that was created in the exposition or the rising action, that conflict kind of sort of starts to get resolved. Okay, so what I'm saying is there will be a problem defined in the exposition or the rising, usually the rising action part. And then in the falling action, what happens is that problem will start to get resolved, start to get solutioned. Okay. And then the last part of the drama is resolution. In the resolution, basically, they close the drama and then tie up the loose ends, if there are any loose ends, and then what will happen to the characters in the end, and that kind of stuff. Okay. Any questions so far? 5 parts: exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and then the resolution. Okay. Just remember these 5, because when we talk about Eugene O'Neill, we are going to see how he brings along these 5 phases. Okay. Okay, now let's move to Eugene O'Neill. I'm not going to give a biography of O'Neill because I'm sure it's there all over the internet, and it's also, I think, in your book. So take the time to read about him. But he has written over like 30 full-length plays. He won the Nobel Prize in Literature, and then he's considered one of the greatest dramatists of America, all time, okay, not just in the 20th century, but all time. But what did he write about? Now we have to again remember, by the time O'Neill came up, we are in the early 20th century now. By the time O'Neill came onto the scene, like I said, realism was in full swing in American drama. Okay, so naturally you would expect O'Neill to talk about realism, right? But O'Neill was not like that. Eugene O'Neill went exactly the opposite direction. He thought that realism could not properly describe, it could describe the outside things, okay, but then it could not really describe the inner parts of you, inner self of man. What does that mean? Now it could talk about society, war, this, that, and all that are physical, and then we can see them, right? But he also had the opinion that, well, realism doesn't, or realist drama doesn't describe what is happening inside man. Now we are talking about wars and everything, and then the repercussions of war. So you can understand what's the impact of all these wars on people, and then what's their mindset. So O'Neill thought that this mindset needs to come out in the dramas, not just that war and then people getting killed and all that. So he used something called expressionism instead of realism. He used expressionism to bring forth the inner self of man. Okay, basically expressionism is kind of sort of, it rejected realism and then focused on things like dreamlike states, daydreaming. The characters will daydream, and then the narrative is not straightforward. They'll go back and forth and that kind of stuff. All this stuff is there in expressionism, which was not a part of natural realism. Okay, so anyway, O'Neill used expressionism rather than realism. He was also concerned about something called the sickness of society. We kind of discussed this in the offline classes, but what does that mean? Sickness of society, O'Neill basically said there is an inner conflict that man has. Okay, he starts with saying man has a very sensitive soul. He's a good person. He's a good guy. But the forces of the society ruin his soul and then lead to inner conflict. Okay, that's what O'Neill says. Now, what he was trying to do is he was trying to portray this conflict in his drama. We'll see how he does this. Okay. Okay. Now let's look at one of his plays, and it's called Desire Under the Elms. In the offline class, I kind of sort of tried explaining what an elm tree is, but on your screen you see that tree, right? That's it's not elms are different types, but then this is one type. Okay, that's the tree that we are talking about. So when he says desire under the elms, he's basically saying desire under that tree. Excuse me. We'll look at why he says desire under the elms. But before that, let me just very quickly give a summary of what the plot is. And then, does anybody want to give the summary? Or should I just go ahead? Okay, that's fine. I'll just go ahead. So this play, Desire Under the Elms, was written, like I said, by Eugene O'Neill in 1924. And then the opening scene basically, okay, now, right, before I start the story, until now we have read a lot of stories, right? We have understood and summarized a lot of stories. All those were written, right? So in your imagination, you're actually imagining reading them, not actually seeing them, right? But here we are talking about drama. So in your imagination, when I'm giving you the summary, imagine things happening. Okay, that'll help actually in coming up the themes in a better way. So anyway, so the scene opens, the first scene opens, and then this is about a farm. There's a farmland, and then the owner of this farmland is Ephraim Cabot. That's the first name on the major characters on your screen. Now, this guy is the head of the household. The farmland is not ready for any agriculture. Nothing can grow there because it is covered with rocks, and then there are these huge elm trees that cover the farmland. So basically, the land is always in the shade. It doesn't get any sunlight, so they cannot grow anything under it. So this, like I said, this farm is owned by Ephraim Cabot. This guy has three sons: Simeon, Peter, and Eben. Those are the three characters on your screen. Simeon, Peter, and Eben. All three sons basically don't like their father. Okay, for various reasons. We'll talk about those. They don't like their father. Simeon and Peter, who are Cabot's sons from his first marriage, hate their father because he gives them, all this physical work and laborious work. Basically, he uses them as laborers in the farmland. So they are really mad about that. That's why they hate him. But Eben, the third son, he is from this guy's second marriage. He hates Cabot because he thinks that his mother was killed because of the hard work that she was doing in the farm. So he basically blames his father for his mother's death. Okay. Now he wants to take revenge on his dad for his mother's death and take the farm for himself because he thinks that he is the rightful owner of the farm. Okay. He thinks that everybody else should leave the farm and then he is the rightful owner. Okay. So this guy, Eben, comes to know that Cabot, the dad, has remarried again. I'm only giving you the summary. I'm not going into every scene of the plot. So this dad marries again, and now all three sons are angry because this basically threatens their right to inherit that farm, right? Everybody is looking at the farm, and then now because this guy has gone and married a young girl, now they don't know if they'll get that farmland or not. Now this Eben guy is smart. So he talks to his brothers and then he says, I'll buy your part of the farm and then you get lost. You basically go from here. Okay. So by the time this old Cabot guy returns home, his sons from his first wife are already ready to leave. They shout at him, they are angry, and then they scold him, and then they just leave to California to earn money. Now only three people are kind of sort of remaining in the scene. Old guy Cabot, his new wife, her name is Abby, and then his son, Eben. Okay. Now, this is where the twist happens. Okay, this is the rising action part of it. But anyway, Abby falls in love with Eben. Abby is the new wife of Cabot, and Eben is his son. So you'll have to remember this because we'll talk about this theme later. Abby falls in love with Eben, and she tries to seduce him. Eben is kind of not interested in her initially. He says, no, my concentration is totally on the farm. I want the farm, not this lady. So I'm not interested. Initially, he says that. Anyway, Abby tells Eben, or Abby tells Cabot actually, to give her the farm if she bears a son or a baby. Okay. So Cabot says, yeah, I promise that I will give you the farm if you give me a son or baby, whatever, right? So in the meantime, she keeps trying to seduce Eben again and again. And then, this time he cannot, there is a time when he cannot resist. So they have an affair. Who is having an affair? Abby and Eben. 1 year, some things happen in between, and then I won't go into that. 1 year passes by and Abby has a baby. Okay. So this is very happy news for Cabot, right? Because Cabot thinks, the baby is his. But unfortunately or fortunately, Abby knows that the baby is not Cabot's, but it is Eben's. Okay. The baby is Eben's baby, not Cabot's. Actually, everybody in the town knows that Cabot is not the father, but they don't say anything in front of him because he's an old guy and then he's happy. So everybody lets him be happy. So anyway, Eben meets his dad and his dad tells him that Eben cannot have the farmland because Abby now has a baby and he has promised the farmland to her if she has a baby. Eben gets mad. He is really angry because he thinks, Abby manipulated him. So he goes and fights with Abby. Eben says during the fight, Eben says he wishes that the baby dies because the baby is the cause for him not getting the farm. Okay. Now, to prove her love towards Eben, this crazy Abby girl, what she does is she goes and kills her own baby. Okay, again, remember this because we'll talk about this theme also. Now the baby is dead, but Eben is shocked, and then he goes and tells the police that Abby has killed the baby and whatnot. In the meantime, our old cabot guy is still there. He's drunk, and then he wakes up finally, finds out what is happening, and then finds out about the affair between Eben and Abby, and is super angry. Obviously, he wants to leave. He goes to his hard-earned money, and then realizes that actually Eben has stolen it. So he does not have money. He does not have. I mean, he has a wife, but then who has an affair with his son. So anyway, he's very sad, and then in the end, what he does is he decides to continue working the hard way, and then on the farm. And then he thinks, I'll die alone because it's God's will. He basically says it's God's will, so I will go through all this hardship. In the end, the ending before the curtains draw, in the end, what happens is the police come and then arrest Eben and Abby, and that's the end of the play. Okay. That's the summary of this. I also have the major characters on the screen so that you can kind of sort of refer to them. Okay. So one theme that is very, very prominent in this play is desire, obviously, right? Because the word itself is there in the title. So each character has a different desire, if you see. Now, if you take Ephraim, okay, let me begin with the sons. The sons have a desire for the farmland. Okay. They have a desire to earn money. Those two people, those original two sons, or the first two sons, go to California to earn money. So they have a desire for the farmland. Later, they have a desire to earn money. Cabot, the old guy, has a desire to have a young wife. Eben, the third son, has a desire to get the farmland for himself. And then, like I said, the title itself has the word desire in it. So desire is written all over the play. That is like a very obvious theme, right? But we are not actually, if you have been in the previous classes, we are not actually interested in the obvious themes, right? We will come up with the themes. So any ideas, any other themes that you can think of? The summary of the drama now, or the play. So anybody, what other themes do you think are there in this story?
Cheat.
Tragedy, sir.
Tragedy. Okay, very good.
Cheat.
Sorry, Ishrat, what is that?
That cheating means Abby.
Cheating. Okay.
And I don't know how to say the
Affair.
word, but
That's what you're saying, right?
Infidelity.
Infidelity. Excellent. Yeah, that's what you're talking about, right? Ishrat, when you say cheating, you mean the incest between Abby and
yeah.
Eben. Okay. Okay, that's good. Anything else?
Greed.
Any other theme that you people can think of?
Yeah, murder, that baby murder, that, sir.
Okay, infanticide. Let me put it that way. Okay, infanticide is basically murdering small children. Okay, very good. Infanticide.
We can take as labor, poverty, suffering here.
Right. Yep. All those are pretty good themes.
Can
Anybody
we
who-
consider the relationship between Eben and Abby as Oedipus complex?
Not directly, because
Is it just incestuous relationship?
I would call it an incestuous relationship, which is, I think your thought is very good. I mean, you're in the right line, but then if you ask me, I would say it is more incest than Oedipus complex. Why? Because Abby is in relationship, Eben's stepmother, right? She's not directly his mother. She's not his birth mother, right? If you look at the Oedipus myth, excuse me, Oedipus's mother was his birth mother. So I would call it more incest, but you're right. But Raj, what we can do is we can actually take that Oedipus myth and make that a theme, right? Actually, there are two more Greek myths inside this story, but that's a good point. Yeah. Okay, that's good. Then what else? What else is there? Revenge. Is revenge a theme? We know that Eben blames his father for his mother's death, and he hates him and he wants to take revenge on the father, right? So revenge can be one theme. Now, Abby, if you really look at it, right, Abby also takes a revenge on the baby. because she thinks the baby comes in between herself and Eben, right? Even though she's Eben's stepmother, she thinks the baby is actually coming in between her and her love towards Eben. So she actually takes the revenge on the baby because she blames the baby. One other theme can be, I don't know, family. But what we have to notice, microphone is switched on. Can you please go on mute? Yeah, thank you. So another theme that is interesting in this is family. Okay, but what we have to really think about is we are not talking about this family that is caring, loving family, right? We are talking about a dysfunctional family in this play. Family here for people is a curse, a revenge-seeking, dark kind of family. That's the kind of family that we're talking about. So that's a twist to the regular family that we usually talk about. And then, like, I think Lily or somebody mentioned, suffering is another theme. But one theme that is not very apparent, but then we've talked about it in the first chapter, is something called the Puritan work ethic, right? Protestant work ethic, sorry. So, which basically says work hard and you'll succeed. Okay, this we can see at the starting of this play when we say, you know, the land is not at all arable, which is you cannot grow anything there. But then this guy Ephraim and his sons and his first wife and the second wife, all of them work really, really hard to get the land to a position where they can grow something. Right? So they're really working hard. And one last thing, I think Raj mentioned it earlier, it's incest. Incest, for the people who don't know what it is basically sexual relationship between close relatives. Eben is Abby's son in a way, though she is not his birth mother. He is the son in a way, but they have a sexual relationship with each other. So that's incest. Okay, that also can be termed as a theme. Again, for those of you who are joining newly, I'm not sure how many of you have joined just for this class and then you have not attended previous classes. The whole point of why we do this class in this way, in this format, where you look at the summary and then we come up with the themes and not look at, you know, what the book is saying or what the internet is saying and whatnot, is because that's the easiest way to remember the story, one thing. And the second thing is bring in your subjectivity also. Bring in what you think into the answers. Okay, it might not be just in your question paper, but usually also. Okay, I will take a minute. What time is it? 12:44. Okay, I will take a minute and then go back to those 5 characteristics or 5 phases of drama that we talked about, right? Exposition, rising action, climax, and resolution. Let's take the story and then link it to those 5 phases. Okay, can anybody tell me what the exposition is? Okay, I'll start with exposition. Okay, then you can kind of carry forward. I say the exposition is in the introduction to the Cabot family, the farmland, and then the dramatist basically telling us that, or the narrator basically telling us that this farmland cannot be, you know, nothing can be grown here and that kind of stuff. That's the exposition. Rising action. Can anybody tell me what's the rising action part of the story?
The marriage part, sir.
Marriage part. Okay, Cabot marrying Abby, right?
And his sons start hating him for the Elms.
Correct. Yep. Okay, good. What's the climax? Or let's just, you know, let's just, you know, club this climax.
Yeah, Abby killing her daughter.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll go a little bit back, Raj. So Eben having the child with Abby, that is where, you know, the climax and then the falling action kind of sort of starts, and then they will express love to each other, and then excuse me, climax is basically where, you know, Cabot finds out about their relationship, right? So what's the last phase? Resolution. Resolution usually is the last thing that happens in the drama. At the fag end of the drama, what happens? That is the resolution. So in this play, what happens in the end is Eben and Abby get arrested. Okay, and then this old guy Cabot is still, you know, tilling that land and then doing whatever he does. Okay, working hard. That's the resolution. Now, resolution basically happens where, you know, you have in a drama or any work of fiction, you will have multiple characters, right? Some are minor characters, some are major characters. Now, the major characters, all the major characters should have a resolution. At the end of the fictional, be it play or novel or whatever, usually we know what is happening to that protagonist. We know what is happening to those major characters. Okay. From a drama perspective, what the dramatist does is he or she will basically tell us in the resolution what is actually happening to these characters. Okay. Let us move on to, okay, any questions so far on Eugene O'Neill? Again, like I said, he's pretty much the only person apart from Miller. He's pretty much the only person that we can talk about as a quintessential American dramatist of the 20th century. There's absolutely nobody else in comparison to O'Neill.
I just have a quick question. Like the
Mhm.
resolution is something related to the outcomes of the drama.
Outcomes of the drama. When you say outcome, you're basically saying the concluding remarks. Is that where you're getting?
The concluding or the learnings.
Okay. Yeah.
If
It can be. It can
Yeah.
be. If there is a moral message from the drama, then it is part of the resolution. But then the way I am talking about resolution is not in the sense that you're talking about really. What I am saying is resolution is actually a part of the drama itself, where the dramatist. So look at it from the dramatist side, not from the viewer's side. Okay. So if you are the dramatist and you are writing a play, you will start with the exposition. You will introduce everybody, and then you will have the rising action. You will have the climax. You will have the falling action. In the end, what are you going to ask yourself? You're going to ask yourself one very important question, which is, did I resolve all the loose ends for all the characters that I have put in my drama? Right?
Okay.
So in the end, if you just leave Ephraim Cabot and then don't tell the viewers what is happening to him, that's a loose end, right? You're just your plot is not cohesive, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I'm coming from. You are coming from the viewer's side. I'm coming from the dramatist side. Both are valid.
Okay.
Okay, great. Now let's move on to this other guy. His name is Arthur Miller. Again, like I said, there's absolutely no competition to O'Neill when it comes to American drama of the 20th century, but except for Miller. Now he's written an American play, or the play that we are going to talk about is called Death of a Salesman. This was written by Miller in 1949, I think. But anyway, Miller was an American playwright. He was an essayist. He was a screenwriter. And then Death of a Salesman is still playing in a lot of places. I mean, there are Broadway shows on it, and then it's considered one of the finest American plays of the 20th century. We will kind of sort of see why that is the case. But before we go into the themes, we will do what we did with O'Neill. Okay. We'll look at the summary of the play, and then we will go into the themes. Does anybody remember Death of a Salesman from the offline class? Nobody. Okay, that's fine. So I'll just give a very quick summary. So this one is a story about a person called Willy Loman. Willy Loman is a typical American. Okay, you'll have to imagine him as a typical American guy who is hardworking. He goes from the 20th century. So he goes, works in a sales department in an insurance company or something, and he's not very good at it. And he returns home one day exhausted from a failed sales trip. He goes to sell something and then he fails in that. He has a wife. Her name is Linda, and then she, like a very good wife, or a typical very good wife, quote unquote, she tries to persuade him, and then she asks, she basically says, hey, you go to your boss and then ask him to shift your work location to New York so that you don't have to travel that long. Okay, so this guy travels very long distances for his work. Billy says, yeah, okay, fine, I'll talk to my boss the next day, whatever. And Billy and Linda, they have two sons. On your screen their characters are written, Biff and Happy. Excuse me. So Biff basically doesn't do anything. So Billy is kind of disappointed in his son, and then he says, his older son, who's Biff. He has come back home to visit his parents, and then he says, you know, he has to make something of himself. He has to get a job. He doesn't work. And Willie has these complaints on his son. So anyway, Linda scolds Willie, and then she says, you know, he's our son. How can you be so critical of him and whatever? Okay. Now, Biff and Happy are also not satisfied with their current lives. It's not just the dad scolding them, but then they themselves are not satisfied with their current lives. And then they kind of talk to each other about their father scolding them for not making something of themselves. Excuse me, give me a few seconds. Let me just gulp some water. I'm sorry, I'm back now. So where was I? Yeah, Biff and Happy are also not satisfied. You can hear me, right? Okay. Biff and Happy are also not happy about their life. They are basically saying, "Oh, our dad scolds us for, you know, not making something of ourselves and whatever." Then there is a scene where Willie kind of daydreams about his sons, and then he goes back in time when his sons were younger. So the daydreaming actually is about when his sons were younger. His wife Linda. Now we are talking about the daydream. Okay, his wife enters the scene, and then their sons kind of leave to do something. And then Willie, what he does is he boasts of a great sales trip. He says, "I've been here, I've been there. This was a wonderful sales trip and all." But in actuality, it will only be like a meagerly successful trip. He doesn't have much success in his job. Willie then tells Linda that soon, you know, he will not be able to make his payments on his car or the appliances that Linda is buying for home. He says, "Well, I don't have that much money." Then he basically complains that people don't like him at work, and then, you know, he himself thinks that he's not good at his job and all that. So he's basically, you know, venting in front of his wife. As this is happening, they hear a woman laughing. Okay, now this woman does not have a name in the play. She's called the woman. So they hear a woman laughing. Who is this woman? This woman is Willie's mistress. Okay, so this guy does not have money to pay his payments and whatever, but he has a mistress. So basically Willie is having an affair. So this is where the drama kind of sort of gets complicated. Okay, now Willie is daydreaming already. Willie goes into a daydream inside his daydream. Okay, so he's having a dream, and then in that dream he's having another dream. So there's multiple layers to this play. But what is the second dream about? He dreams about his mistress, now the woman, right? He dreams about the mistress, how they meet, and then, you know, how they spend time and whatever. So we'll not get into that, but we'll come back to the sons. Happy, right? One of the sons. And then he comes, and then he tries to talk to Willie. Willie is very irritated, and then he shouts that, you know, he should have gone to Alaska with his brother Ben. Now we don't know who Ben is. We don't know if Ben exists. Ben is not shown. But then this guy Willie is, you know, talking to Ben in his imagination. Okay, there's no physical Ben in front of him to talk. This fellow is in his, you know, his thoughts. Ben was there sometime, but then, you know, he's not physically present in front of him to talk. So Willie keeps talking to his brother Ben pretty regularly in this play. Why? Because Ben kind of goes and then finds a diamond mine or something in Africa, and then he becomes rich. So Willie kind of has these, you know, made up conversations with this guy Ben. So listening to Willie shout, a major character again, or a major kind of semi-major character called Charlie. He comes in. Who is Charlie? Charlie is this fellow's neighbor. Okay, Willie's neighbor. Then they play cards, and then Charlie offers a job, but then Willie rejects it because, you know, he thinks it's insulting. He's like, "No, why are you giving me a job? I don't want it," whatever. Now remember, this is the same fellow who does not have money to pay, but then his ego, quote unquote, or let me not even put it as ego, his thought process doesn't allow him to take a job from his neighbor. Okay, now something happens in these daydreams and everything, but we'll back to the present time. Okay, Willie's standing outside. Biff and Happy come, and then, you know, they discuss Willie's condition with their mother, and Linda scolds them saying that, why are you judging your father like this and whatever. And then she mentions that Willie had previously tried to commit suicide. Now Happy gets very angry at his brother because he now thinks, Willie has already tried to commit suicide, and then the brother is judging him. That's why. So they have a fight anyway. After a lot of fighting, everybody goes to bed. Okay, that's the end of first act. This is a 2-act play, and in the act 2, what happens is it opens with Willie enjoying the breakfast, and then he goes and asks his boss, like he has promised his wife last night. He goes and asks his boss for a transfer to New York, but his boss says get lost. He says refuses it. Then Willie meets his sons for dinner and then tells them that he is actually fired from the job. So forget about the transfer, he's actually lost his job. So there's again a fight between Biff and Willie, and some things happen afterwards and then Willie goes home. Everybody sleeps except for Willie. Okay, all other characters sleep in the night, but except for Willie. This is where this thought process, a very important thought process, generates. He thinks that if he dies, then his family will get the insurance money and then they will live happily. So what he does is he gets into a car, he speeds, and then he dies. Okay, he basically commits suicide. Now we are coming to almost the end of the play. There's the next scene is basically funeral for Willie, and Linda and Happy are standing in shock because very few people have come to Willie's funeral. They are very sad that very few people have turned up for Linda's husband's funeral. Okay. Now Linda asks Willie for forgiveness because she won't be able to cry. Okay, she basically says, I'm unable to cry, please forgive me. Then in the end, what happens is she kind of sort of tries to sob, or she kind of sort of cries or sobs, and then she basically says, we are free. Okay, that's the sentence from the play. She says, we are free, and then that's when the curtain falls, and that's the end of the play. Okay. As you can see, there's a pretty intense drama. Okay, this is not a drama where you just see one night and then it doesn't impact you. It impacts you for days and weeks together. Okay, once you watch it. But let's see what the themes are. One very apparent theme is relationship between people, be it Linda and Willie or their relationship with their sons or whatever, whoever's relationship. That's one theme that's coming across. And then the other one is the American dream. Swapna, do you have a okay? Yeah, she doesn't have a question. Okay, that's one dream. Sorry, that's one theme. Another theme is the American dream. Specifically a characteristic of American dream. Let me put it that way. What is this characteristic? A false vision of what happens, what helps a man achieve the American dream. Now, if you look at this character, Willie, okay, he is set in his ways. He is not ready to change. The whole society is changing, but he's not. Okay, Willie basically says, if I work hard, I will succeed, period. Doesn't matter what the society is doing, whatever, he's set in his old ways, and then he's not ready to change. Then he kind of sort of in the play, he keeps telling himself that excuse me, he'll succeed someday. So he actually kind of sort of lives in denial because, as we have seen, he himself knows that he's not good at his work, but then he still thinks, I keep working, I will succeed someday. Now, another aspect of this is he also thinks that Biff, his older son, right, he should be fulfilling Willie's unfulfilled dream. That is what Willie thinks. Okay, he says, it's kind of sort of like there are some Indian dads also who do this. They basically say, oh, I couldn't study, I couldn't make it big, but then you're my son, you should make it big, right? So their unfulfilled dream is actually passed on to the son or the daughter, and then they say, you do this because I couldn't do it, you do this, right? So this fellow is in the same way. He basically says, okay, fine, I am working myself to death and whatever, but Biff, what are you doing, right? You're not doing anything. You will have to kind of fulfill my unfulfilled dream. So like I said, he basically doesn't change with time, he doesn't change with the society. Instead, he is fixated on his view that someone who is presentable in his job, like a salesperson, as a salesperson who is presentable, will make it big in sales. That's his mantra, right? He basically says, if I dress properly, if I look properly, I will succeed in sales. But that's not how it works. And then this guy is not ready to agree to that. Okay, so that's the aspect of American Dream that I wanted to bring in. Now, before I go to contradiction, any other themes that you people can think of?
Sir, innocence and experience.
What is that? Can you repeat that?
Innocence and experience, sir.
Innocence and experience. Okay. Okay. Can you elaborate that, Sai Lakshmi? Why do you think innocence and experience is one of the themes?
Sir, this Willie Roman character is very innocent and he believes in hard work, but he never succeed in that way.
Okay.
Experience means in the way in the job he has so much experience, but it doesn't help him to succeed in his career. And he was always in the dream. He sees his brother, died brother. Like
Okay.
this.
Okay. You can look at it from that perspective. Sure. Sandhya, can you go on mute if you are not saying something to us?
Can we consider Willie Loman has false ambitions about his career or something else? Because
Yes.
even though he doesn't have means those many skills, he went to he goes to his boss and he asks for promotion. Then outright he gets fired.
Right.
So can we consider that he has false ambition? Can we
Absolutely.
consider it as a theme?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's where I was coming from when I said, a certain aspect of American Dream, right? So he's so set in his ways that he's not even ready to understand his proper position, right? The guy is not bad. This is a good guy, right? But just he has this false impression of himself and then the society around him. He just doesn't get it, right? So you're right. There is a kind of sort of a false, what did you call it, Raj? False
Ambition.
false vision. Okay, yeah, he has this false vision of the society.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, good. Somebody else was saying something.
And always, society is aloof from our desires or our needs. Like, when during his funeral, so many people, they couldn't turn up, even though his close relatives or somebody else. So
Right.
can we consider society is always aloof, like, they won't consider as they have their own needs and priorities.
You can consider it. That is one of the minor, I would put it as a minor theme. Why am I putting it as a minor theme? Because that's something that only comes in the end, and then it doesn't actually impact the story as much as the other themes, right? The other themes that you mentioned, like
Okay.
the American Dream and all those are prominent themes in the drama, right? So like any work of fiction, especially drama, you can take any scene and then make a theme out of it, right? Any scene will be there only for a reason, and then you can actually make a theme out of that. But we are only looking at, or when we say themes, right, we are only looking at the major themes. You're right that the aloofness of the society kind of sort of comes forth, but I would put it as a minor theme. But that's good insight. That's good. Okay. I'm sorry, I have not been keeping track of the chat. Let me quickly check what the chat says. Can we say illusion as one of the theme? Willie is always daydreaming about future. So Manjusha, he's not actually daydreaming about the future. He's actually daydreaming about the past. Okay, he's daydreaming about, his sons are young and then they are all Biff and Happy have studied very well and then they are doing very nice, and then Biff is superb in football, and that's the kind of daydreaming he's doing. He's actually dreaming about things that he wanted to happen but they didn't happen. Okay, so he's not actually saying that he will make it big and this, that, and all. He's actually daydreaming. The daydreams that he has are from the past. He's basically saying, what could it have been? Those are the daydreams. Okay, I just want to very quickly go back to Sai Lakshmi's comment, right? Innocence to experience, right? I'm not really sure, Sai Lakshmi, if I totally agree with what you say. I think you're in the right ballpark. It is just that, there's something missing in that. Okay. Why? Because now innocence to experience basically is when a character starts out as very innocent. Okay. And through the course of the work of art or through the course of the story, he or she learns and then gains experience, right? You're right in a way, because Willy Loman starts out like a regular typical insurance sales agent at the starting of the story. Okay, he has experience and everything, but this guy has not learned anything from his experience. That's one thing that you'll have to remember. Okay, so that is, you can call it a theme. It's just that it's not in the typical sense of innocence to experience that we talked about earlier, right? Do you agree with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect.
Sir,
Okay.
can we consider the relationship between Willy Loman and the woman? It shows it means it gives importance for means it shows that every person has some kind of dark side to his life. Can we consider it as a theme?
So it can, again, right, it can be considered as a theme, but then the statement every person has a dark side, right, is a dangerous and a fully loaded statement, right? So from a
Every
Willy
person
Loman
means
perspective,
they want to maintain it as a secret life. They
Right.
don't want to disclose it. They don't want to reveal it to anybody. By any chance, if it gets out, even they want to pretend that they're into not that kind of life. So can we consider everybody has some kind of dark secrets in their life?
yeah, again, right, I'm just a little uncomfortable making that statement, only because we are talking about everybody, right? Let's say some people. Okay, is that okay? Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Let's say some people have these dark secrets, and Willy Loman is one of them. Let me put it that way. Okay.
We can take it as desire. Really know the desire that is.
Yeah, you can look at it that way also. True. He desires this,
Desire means generally it is accepted, sir. If you go for desire, generally people accept. So, for example, I desire to have for example, nice car. I desire to have a good wife. So, all these desires, they're accepted by society. Nobody says anything if you have desires.
He's still dreaming about that woman. So that's a desire.
Right. So there are two aspects, right, Raj? Like you said, from Raj's perspective, right? If you say you want a good car or you want to own a Mercedes or something in the future, that's a desire. That's a natural, normal desire, right? But that doesn't mean that, let's say, some XYZ does not have unnatural desires, right? Like Lily is saying, now Willy Loman, I mean, it's not like every male on earth says, let me have an affair. That's not how it is, right? But Willy Loman has that desire, right? So her perspective basically is he is not having this natural, he's not being a natural husband or quote unquote good husband where he's faithful to his wife. He's trying to go and then have an affair on the side, right? That's not common, but then it's also not uncommon. That's why I said, some people have these desires. So Lily's point is, it can also be looked at as desire for an affair, right? Maybe it's a compensation of his rest of his life, right? His rest of his other life is all messed up anyway. So maybe it's a compensation for having that life that is not fulfilling, satisfactory. He wants to have an affair.
Okay, simply can we put as a wrong desire then?
Wrong. What is that?
Desire. Wrong desires.
Wrong desires. Okay. Yeah. I mean, again, right and wrong are relative, but yeah, that's fine. Yeah, wrong desire in a normal sense, we can put it that way. Because extramarital affairs are usually called wrong. So that in that way, yes, we can say it's a wrong desire. Yeah, somebody was saying something else.
Sir, what about the last scene when she said that we are free? Is that mean that Willy, means he died now by suicide? So is that mean that he's free from the hard work and hardship, or else they are free from other things? Just I want to know that the last scene.
Excellent question. There's no answer. There is no right or wrong answer to this. Okay, it depends on how you interpret it. And then you have given us both interpretations. One interpretation can be basically saying Willie is free from this stupid life of, sales agent and then not succeeding in anything that he does. And then his unrealistic expectations on the sons and everything. He's finally free from this. Okay, that's one interpretation. Another interpretation basically is, Willie died, but then he also left $20,000. That's the amount that's there in the play. I didn't mention it, but the family gets about $20,000. Okay, US dollars. So another interpretation can be, Willie died, Willie died, he died. He's gone. But then now we are free from all this debt. We are free from all these, payments and car payments and whatever, because now we have this $20,000 with us. That can be one interpretation. Does that make sense, Ishra?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, very good discussion. Yeah, this is exactly what I like in this class. Thank you so much for being participative. This is exactly what we'll have to do in classes. It's not just one person speaking and then a bunch of people listening. It should be a productive discussion. Very good discussion. And thanks for all those themes. And like I said, I don't know how many of these themes are listed in your book. You can always go back to the book and then read. Okay, you will find some more themes that they will list. And then if you can think of any, then we still have 2 more classes. You can always come back and then just, kind of sort of pick up this discussion where we left. Okay. But for now, we have about 7 more minutes, and then I will leave you so that you have a solid 10 minutes break before the next class starts. So we always end units with, or we always end the bunch of units with answering questions from this unit. One of the questions that can come in your exam is, what are the major themes of desire under the elms? Okay, we talked about all these the desire, revenge, suffering, and these themes. You can write about them, and then also write about why you think it's a major theme. Okay, and like I've always repeated, don't shy away from giving your opinion in your answer. In literature, there is no right or wrong way of interpreting anything, especially when there's a story and then you can interpret it in a million ways. So it's absolutely okay that you talk about your subjectivity or what do you think in your opinion. Just stick to the question. That's all. That's all I've always been requesting. Read the question. As long as the question you're answering the question, yeah, go for it. Okay. Then analyze Willie Loman's character from Death of Salesman. This kind of sort of, goes back to my earlier statement. You can talk about Willie's character here and analyze it in your own way. Like Raj might say, Willie's character is a character that has the wrong desires. Okay. Lily might say that his desires are there, but then, he's probably his desire makes sense because rest of his life is messed up anyway. Right? Afros might say something else, Ishrat might say something else. So analyze it in your own way. You can talk about, the major thing is you can talk about how he is reluctant to change. Okay, because that's the one thing that this character kind of, personifies, for lack of a better word. But that's one thing that totally comes across in the play. This guy is reluctant to change. He cannot change. He is also filled with, inconsistencies, whatever. I'm sorry. I think I said I will talk about contradiction, but then I didn't talk about it. So let me just quickly go back and then talk about the theme of contradiction, because I think that's a little important. Okay. Okay, but then I want to mention this theme because this theme doesn't come across unless you watch the play or read it completely. Okay, unless you do that, you will not recognize that there is contradiction in the play, especially in Willie Loman's character. Okay. Why am I saying there is contradiction? At the starting of the play, he says at one point, Biff is lazy. Mumtaz, Sayyedam Mumtaz, do you have a question for us? Or if not, can you go on mute, please? Okay, I just muted her. So at the starting of the play, right, this Willie's character, he says Biff is lazy, and then he's complaining to his wife saying he hasn't done anything, he does not have a job and whatever. Like hardly 2 minutes later, he says Biff is not losing. Biff is a great guy. Biff is this, Biff is that. So there is a absolute contradiction in his own words. So this happens all along the play. Billy, especially the character, is filled with contradictions. Okay, so you can read about it on the internet, or I think it's also mentioned in your book. I'm not sure, but just go and then read it. If you have any questions, we can talk about it in the next class. But I did want to mention that there are some themes that you cannot, no matter how much summarization happens, and then no matter how much we discuss in the class, there are some themes which are important that will not come out unless you read the whole story, unless you watch the whole play, right? It's like me going to a movie and then coming and then telling you the summary of the movie. That's all okay. I might be a great storyteller, but you will miss so much stuff if you don't actually read, right? Which is the beauty of the literature, because beauty of any literature, because that's why people suggest people to actually read the book. There's nothing better than actually reading the book. But because we all don't have so much time to, read every single thing that the book talks about, that is why we are summarizing and coming up with the themes. Okay. Back to answering questions. Yeah, I think I said we covered both of them. Okay, the final part of our class, like always, there are going to be recap questions. This is not to test your knowledge or anything. This is just to make sure that we are all on the same page. Okay, first one. Who wrote The Death of a Salesman?
Arthur
Miller.
Miller.
Okay, perfect. Okay, this one is really tough. When was Desire Under the Elms written?
1924, sir.
Who is that? Sai Lakshmi. Okay. Good.
While the Civil War has.
Sorry, what was that? This has nothing to do with the Civil War. Did you just say Civil War?
Yes.
No, it was written in 1924. So this is between the wars. Okay. It was after the First World War, but before the Second World War. Okay, this one, third one, is again a subjective one, and I want to actually hear I've never asked this question in the previous classes or for fiction or short story, but what's your favorite? Maybe two of you can answer this question. What's your favorite character from The Death of a Salesman?
Willie Loman's wife.
Willie Loman's wife. Okay.
Yeah,
Why?
Linda's character is really good. Yeah.
Okay, great. So two people agree, but can you tell me why?
She actually asked for forgiveness in the end. And she feels, I mean, she's guilty. She's guilty.
She repents for her actions. She repents the way she behaved with her husband.
Okay. And if you also think about it, right, she actually does show her good nature in two places. One, when Willie is complaining about the son, she says, hey, don't judge him so much, he's our son, right? So she's kind of sort of telling her husband to not judge the son. And then in a second instance where the son is scolding the father, she also tells Biff, hey, you don't judge your father so much. Okay, he's a nice guy, he actually tried to commit suicide. Don't push him, right? So yeah, okay, good. Yeah, my favorite character is also Linda. Okay, good that we all agree, and that's a good note to end the class. But okay, yeah, let us take a pause here. If you're all okay with it, let us take a pause here for today, and then we'll continue tomorrow. What we'll do in tomorrow's class is, I'm sorry, the next class is tomorrow, right?
Yes.
Okay. In the next class, what we'll do is we will move to the last block of your course book. It deals with women's writings, African American writing, and Jewish writing. I have a concern with this block only for one reason. And the reason is all these three topics, right? Women's writing, African American writing, and Jewish writing are not so much Jewish writing, but the other two at least, huge topics. Okay, they have books written about these topics. Okay, and then we have to cover it in a matter of an hour or so. Okay, and even in the book, I think it's not more than 20 pages. So, but we will try our best to cover. But do you have any preference on which topic you want to spend more time? Do you want to spend more time on women's writing or African American writing?
African American writings.
African American.
Okay, African American. Okay. what we'll try and do is we'll start with women's writing. Okay. And then as long as Raj doesn't have, because he's the only one who said women's writing, as long as Raj doesn't have any questions, we'll move on to African American writing, and then we'll finish up with Jewish writing. All right.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to leave you people now. You have a 9 minutes break and then before your next session. Thank you very much for joining the class, and I'll see you all tomorrow. All right. And like I said,
Okay,
right, in the
thank you.
last class, what we'll do is we will come back to some of these. I'll either, do like a rapid course of everything that we have studied. And I have a couple of pages that I want to share with you. It basically gives you a background and then overview of American literature, fiction, as well as poetry, as well as drama. Maybe I'll send it to one of you. I'll take a picture and then send it to one of you on WhatsApp. Can you please share it in your group? Lily, I think I have your number. So can I share it with you, and then you can kind of circulate it? Is that okay?
Okay.
Okay, all right. With that note, I don't have anything else. If you don't have any questions, I'll see you all in the next class, all right?
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for joining.